Okay, guys, I am here today with Chris Rampley, who is the Director of Strategy and Operations, Applied Insights Foundry at Capgemini. So welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So first thing I like to start out with every person that I interview is tell us what the heck is Capgemini?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Capgemini is a global consulting firm, commonly referred to as an SI, Systems Integration Partner. We are one of the larger firms in the world in our space. We do about $20 billion a year in revenue. We have about 230,000 employees worldwide. And so, yeah, we compete with the Accentures and the PwCs and the Deloittes and the TCSs and all of those things, everything from managed services to application development to digital strategy and transformation, organizational change management. All of those things fall in the scope of what Capgemini does.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So you've highlighted a couple of competitors. So I would love to know what you guys do that's very different than some of those other people out there in this space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And the reality is a lot of, and even Capgemini will do this from time to time, we try to differentiate ourselves based on our people. And the reality is that's not really that much of a difference. So what we do at Capgemini, and specifically what my job is to do with the Applied Insights Foundry, is to differentiate ourselves through our value propositions and the solutions that we have for specific business problems. And so what that means is I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that our ability to integrate your SAP ERP into your data and analytics engine is going to be better because it's Capgemini or not. I'm going to be the guy that comes and says, if you have a specific problem around this, I have a solution around that. If I look at retail as a good example, we have some products that we have developed that are proprietary to Capgemini that our competitors, quite frankly, don't have. I was the global product manager for the connected bag system, which is an IoT device for retail designed to eliminate friction from the consumer shopping experience. That solution is what we use to differentiate us. And we have several of those across different industry verticals as well as technical application points.
Nice. I bet you learned a few lessons through that project. Anything you could share with us?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest lessons for that is, especially when you're looking at a retail or a B2C type innovation, is really making sure that you're evaluating the value of that innovation against the totality of your stakeholder community. And what I mean by that is when we first started out building the connected bag system, we focused very intently on removing friction from the customer journey. And there is value in that. And I don't want to take away from the value in that. But when you start talking about investments of millions of dollars to implement this type of capability, simply saying it's going to make our customers be able to do commerce with us easier isn't enough. So we had to then go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if we're doing that, if this is our why, is because we want to use to remove friction for the customers, that's fine, but we also need to have a why for our supply chain and our store operations, and eventually our regional sales leadership for our stores. And then we need to have a tie-in to digital and the kind of multi-channel experience that they might have with your brand. And so we had to we had to translate how we talked about this innovation in the context of the customer journey and make sure that while we talked about that, we also talked about how it added value and made things cheaper, faster, better for the store operations, for your predictable models, for your marketing automation and your retargeting, how you would start bringing in data from those in-store product interactions and use those to drive targeted marketing automation processes, things like that. So where it's not just about, this pencil is designed to write things on paper, but it really becomes more about this pencil as a vehicle that allows you to tell your story.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So I'm fairly well versed, but some of our reviewers may not be today. I'd love to know your definition of what artificial intelligence versus machine learning versus IoT. Like, what the heck do those things mean?
That's a great question. And I was actually having that exact conversation with some of our leadership team in North America this morning. When I think about artificial intelligence, that is a computer recognizing that an action needs to take place without a human having to do that action. A lot of times AI is used for situational monitoring and then the alerting systems corresponding to the monitoring. So if you think about, let's use fast food as a good example, right? So if you have a fast food restaurant, call it McDonald's, and they do a lot of business in the drive-through, right? And all of a sudden their drive-through starts to get backed up. And then based on how far back it is, the computer will decide to whom they send a message to and what the contents of that message is, right? So if all of a sudden we get to where we have a 3 or 4 car queue, it might send an alert to your branch manager saying, hey, the situation in your drive-through is turning yellow, right? And then if we get to where we have a 13 car queue that's wrapping around the building and nobody get in and out of the parking lot, now we've got a code red situation, right? So that's AI. When we start talking about machine learning, that's when we start talking about the machine being able to develop context between 2 data points on its own. So all of a sudden it's, okay, well, the machine recognizes that, if you have a set of, let's call it 50 data points that track on a timeline chart that looks kind of like an EKG would, if you know what that looks like. So you got a little bar that goes up and down. And they all kind of have a similar pattern, right? When some goes up, others go down, but they're consistent about that. Mm-hmm. Well, the machine starts to learn what deviation looks like amongst those correlations. So all of a sudden, when one line goes up and another line is supposed to go down, but it goes up instead, that's when the machine will learn, okay, I need to now dive into that and look at the Y's. And then based on that, the machine will be able to either consider that as a future state, now this is the new normal, and the machine knows now when this goes up, this now goes up, or it'll send the alert using the artificial intelligence we talked about before, and said, hey, something's broken. This is who it needs to go to and who needs to address it. Okay. And when we talk about IoT in large part is talking about data collection at the edge. And sometimes you talk about bi-directional exchange of information, but it's really one direction, for all intents and purposes. It's about capturing data and sending it back. Now, AI and ML can then drive the change at that edge device. If I use traffic monitoring as a good example, a smart stoplight can be an example of an IoT solution. The smart stoplight might also have a camera on it or a sensor in the ground that says there's a car waiting here, so I need to change the crossing signal to red so that these cars can go. The IoT is about collecting that there's a car there, sending it to your data engine, and then your AI and ML will then trigger, okay, now based on those criteria, we need to change the state of that intersection. So now left to right turns red, north and south turns green, etc. But that's what we mean when we start talking about IoT. So that's when you're talking about using a physical device to collect data outside of your traditional one-to-one interaction with a computer or a screen.
Wonderful. You've done such a great job of explaining that in layman's terms. So thank you, because I know it's a bit of a confusing world. I know I said I'm well versed. I understand, I'm picking up what you're putting down, but it took me a while to get there. So I'm sure there's a few people listening to this going, I get it now.
Yes.
Very cool. So in terms of when you first joined Capgemini till today's date, I'm sure that things have evolved and changed tremendously with these 3 pieces of or types of technology. Anything that you can say around what was the biggest change and what do you see kind of coming in this space?
Yeah, I think the biggest changes I've seen is that they've become less specialized and more ubiquitous. So I say physically, but I guess it's really more organizationally, sit within our insights and data global business. Okay. And so what that means is we have a practice globally set up just to talk about and to deliver services that are involving insights and data. Now, what does that mean? Because I don't touch SAP. I don't do anything with ERP systems. I don't touch CRM or vendor management software. But those are all components of data, and they drive a lot of insights and actions for companies as they move forward. And a lot of those tool sets are part of enterprise transformation initiatives to enable future state capabilities that they don't have today. And so if I go back 3 to 5 years, concepts like IoT were so unique, you almost had a specialized practice set up around IoT. I know about it because I was but now IoT has become so ubiquitous that now, it's almost like talking about mobile was back in the early 2000s when we talked about, oh, well, there's web and then there's mobile, and these two are necessarily different.
Mhm.
And now we talk about it all as digital. And even now, as we move to today, we're talking about it all as commerce, because your customer doesn't care if it's a brick and mortar experience or they're doing it over their phone. So I think that the biggest change has been the industrial adoption of some of these concepts, and then sort of the emulsification across different specialties, to where these things are now embedded traits within other specialized service lines, not their own individual thing.
That makes sense. And how do you guys feel like where it's going, how that's going to affect both Capgemini as an organization, but you and your role as well?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest change that I'm seeing is, we are getting to the point where our go-to-market proposition has to be more value-centric than it is capability-centric. So when I look at global SIs like Capgemini, historically we have lived and died on the concept of the billable hour and utilization rates. And then when you look at globalization, we have combated market forces for things like margin erosion by using global distributed workforces and tapping into skilled talent pools that may be accessible on a lower cost basis, right? Well, all the while, what that's done is that has tied our market value directly to our market cost, which means now we have challenges when you start looking at things like resource scarcity in specific domain areas. Now we cannot deliver to our customers if we cannot add more people. And adding more people is becoming increasingly constrained with geopolitical environments, as well as the rapid pace of change in the technology ecosystem. Training somebody on a specific tool set doesn't make as much sense today as it did yesterday, because there's no guarantee that tool set's going to be around in 18 months. So I think for us, it's really forcing a cultural shift where our value proposition is centered on business impact and opportunity for our clients, either solving a very specific problem, opening a very specific door, driving a specific KPI, to be improved. But it's not about, we have the ability to deliver whatever on whatever platform for you moving forward, right? That's becoming so commoditized that there's really not that much value in it. And there's so much information available on Google that if you are willing to go the least expensive route and you can give your current employees time, they can find the answers in most cases to pretty much any problem you're trying to solve just by using tools that are available over the internet.
Awesome. Very, very interesting. So many shifts coming in this space, and I find it both scary and exciting all at the same time of where things are actually going.
It is exciting because I think we are as a society and as a culture, we're moving more into value-based engagement, right? Mm-hmm. People don't go to Starbucks because it's the cheapest coffee. Yeah. People go to Starbucks because they find value in the Starbucks experience, right? Which is a combination of the ease of interaction, the quality of coffee, the experience when they get there, everything involved, right? It's no one thing over the other. And I think that, in that we have seen a move in technology from services to products. Yes. And what you see is companies like ours who have built their enterprises on the fact that we have these wide-reaching talent pools who can do a wide variety where breadth of information and knowledge has been more valuable. What we're seeing now is a market shifting and saying, I'd rather buy from more people, but no, I'm buying from the most expert level person in that field, and then I'll go to their neighbor who's most expert level in the field adjacent to them. Right? I don't need one person who's pretty good at all the fields. I'd rather work with the different leaders in each of their domains, and they're actually willing to pay more for it. You see it when companies acquire startups because they start out by maybe the startup gives them something for free, and then they pilot something for 6 months, and then they acquire them for, $78 million, right?
Mhm.
Great story. There was definitely a consulting company on the front end of that who said, we can build you this for somewhere around $3 or $4 million,
Right.
right? So the market is willing to pay 20x when the market believes the value is there, and the market's not going to believe it because you tell them you're going to have to prove it. And once you prove that value is there, the market will reward you for that value. And I think that's the single biggest change and force that the SI industry is going to have to compete against moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to shift gears a little bit and just chat briefly about, I understand that you were doing a WebEx with Adobe. Was it this week?
Yeah, last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday. So tell us a little more. What did you guys chat about? What were some of the big takeaways, I guess?
Yeah, so it was kind of funny. I came up with my most clickbait title that I possibly could. And I titled the webinar "The End of Omnichannel."
Okay.
Because a lot of people in digital, and I've been through this journey for the last 10 years or so, still think of omnichannel as unified communications across a variety of different screen types, right? If I render my website on a laptop and you go to access it on a mobile device, are you going to have a consistent experience and see the same images, et cetera, right? And the reality is that's just simply not good enough, because now that technology is becoming so native to our day-to-day lives, the willingness for your customer to take on the burden of distinguishing between your channels of engagement is gone. Your customers now look at you as a singular brand, and they engage with your brand at different channels based on what's convenient for them, not you. And so what we talked about was how and it's not just about technology, it's also about cultural and operational organization, but once you have the cultural commitment and the operational organization in place, there are now technologies that are market ready and proven to be capable of delivering truly frictionless integrated experiences across all of your channels, whether that's contact center, whether it's mobile, whether it's your tablet or your iPad or your laptop or whatever, or when you go in store, right? So now we can make it so that when you have a product interaction in store, that company, that brand can attribute that product interaction to you when you are back online. And so now they can retarget it. They can remind you that this was actually the pair of jeans you looked at when you were in X retailer the other day, right? Those are the things that they really want. And I had the experience of working with one of the large, national home improvement stores back in the day, where they were trying to rebuild their e-commerce website. And what we came to, they called us and said, "Hey, come help us, come help us. We're afraid this is going to fall on its face." And when we got in there, we learned two things. One, your e-commerce site's not actually going to crash. You're going to be fine. But two, it's also not going to drive the lift that you're looking for, because what your customers actually want is for you to remember them, not to let them buy products in less than 3 clicks, right? They want that also, but they want to do it in a way that's informed, that removes anxiety from them. And so if we look at the example of, I buy a refrigerator from this particular store, that store now knows what refrigerator I buy. So when they're marketing water filters for my refrigerator to me, they're not sending me to the wrong water filter. So that when I go home and unpack it and unload all the crap off of the shelf in my refrigerator to unscrew the water filter in the back and screw the new one on, I don't go, oh crap, this one doesn't work, right? Those are the things that customers are now looking at as table stakes expectations, right? You're not going to let me buy the wrong color of paint when I go in and say I need to repaint this bedroom. You know what color of paint I bought from you last time. Like, I don't need to remember what you call your paint colors. You guys already have tools in place to do that, right? So that's so that's kind of what we talked about. So we went through a webinar and we introduced the audience to fictional shopper named Amy. Amy was able to interact with a variety of different digital channels, large format signage in the store, native mobile applications, as well as traditional online shopping. And then obviously she's in store. And we were able to demonstrate how with that combined with some more innovative IoT concepts, we can really create a full 360-degree view of who Amy is, but do in a way that allows for the brand to provide value to Amy, not just to take Amy's data and information for the purpose of trying to sell to her more effectively, because at some point we know that gets creepy. What this does is allow them to get to know Amy in a way that Amy doesn't mind. Amy's not off put by it. She's not, she doesn't become defensive with the brand. In fact, she becomes more transparent with the brand, and the concept of brand loyalty goes away because she's not making a conscious decision. Now it's just where Amy goes for, a special look when she needs to go out for an evening. That's the difference.
I love it. I love what you said there too, around brand loyalty, because that's what the majority of marketers are actually tracking is brand loyalty. But that's part of the research that we've done as a firm, is that brand loyalty actually does not correlate to sales and revenue. The only thing that does is brand attachment. One of the 6 brand principles that we score all of our clients on, because you can actually watch on a graph, brand attachment goes up, so does sales and revenue, and if it drops, it's fascinating. So I love what you've said there. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, not a problem. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So that being said, if viewers wanted to learn a little bit more about you or Capgemini, where would they be able to find you?
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram, both is at Chris Rampley. Twitter becomes a little bit more business centric. Instagram becomes a little bit more lifestyle, but if they want to know more about who I am, that's probably going to give them a more clear picture. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Chris Rampley. You can find me there pretty easily. And then Capgemini's global website, www.capgemini.com. If you go to capgemini.com/Applied Insights Foundry, you will also reach my team's kind of microsite. If anybody needs to send an email to me and they don't want to use Twitter to reach me, they can always email me at chris.rampley@capgemini.com.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today. This was hugely informative. I'm really excited about it.
Good, Lisa. Thank you so much for reaching out. And, please don't hesitate to call if there's something else I can help with.
Awesome.